Do you brush your teeth once and never do it again?
That's a good one.
If you work out or go to the gym or take a class or run or lift weights, do you do it once? Life is managed care. If you want to feel good, think good, and bring in the good. If it doesn't match what you feel internally or emotionally, you can't
Mhm.
manifest it, for lack of a better word, bringing it in, attracting it in. You cannot change what you don't know, right? If you don't understand the negative thinking that's tripping you up, that's creating patterns, that's constantly replicating in your life, then what is change about? You need to know what it is you're wanting to change. Where do you feel like you're not enough? Which is really your stinking thinking, right? I need to learn how to feel that I'm deserving, feel that I'm enough. Change
I
is
like that.
possible. If you think you can't, you actually can.
Hello, 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 everybody out there in the world. Today, I have a guest on my podcast, and we're talking about healing and all the things relevant to doing better in life. My guest today is Jessica McIntyre. She's been a psychotherapist here in LA for about 30 years, and she's recently written a book called Unbreak, a psychologist's remedy for healing the spirit in 7 action steps. And I've got her here with me today. Welcome, Jessica McIntyre.
Hello.
So good to have you. Um, I guess just tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into this field?
Well, I started off early in life as a creative. I was a dancer. I started dancing since I was 5 in New York City, and I performed with the Children's Ballet Theater. And that just meant I performed everywhere in New York City. And that's my first love. And then I decided to explore acting. And I still think of myself as a creative. But then I moved here from New York and I decided to go back to school and work on my intellect. And I realized when I was back in school that I was pretty much helping people my entire life, probably from my early childhood and the trauma that I suffered. And I had been in therapy for, at least 17 years. And when I decided to go back to school, it just opened up a whole new world for me. I realized that I was really on my path. Yes, I was a creative, but I was on my path because healing meant everything to me, both for myself and for others. And that's how I got into going back to school
Amazing.
for therapy.
What inspired you to write this book with all of your experience?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, in my therapy, I would always ask the question, what do I need to do? What is it that I'm not seeing? I understand psychologically why I feel this way. And nobody, and I'm saying nobody, I had about 5 different therapists over that almost 20-year period. Nobody was direct. Nobody would
Mhm.
say, well, this is what's getting in your way, and this is what you can do to overcome. They just listened and said, "How do you feel about that? And how does that make you feel? And why?" And I thought I was gonna pull my hair out of my head. So when I finally went to school when I was 29, it answered some of my questions. And I thought, why isn't the person on the other side receiving therapy getting treated intelligently and maximizing that money and time that they're spending? So I made a vow right then and there I would do things very differently when I was going to practice. And so my people would come to me and say, I don't understand. Why, how am I standing in my way? And I know I want this. Why don't I have it? And
Mhm.
this was much of what I was feeling when I was in therapy. So it tapped into such a deep part of myself. I thought, I've really got to figure this out, not just for myself, but for others. And so this great opportunity came along. It was called The Laws of Attraction. This had to be about, I don't know, 15 or 17 years ago. And people started coming in and were so mad. They're like, I've been working on therapy for over a decade, and I know what it is that's in my way, and I know what I want. Why don't I have it? Why don't I have it?
Mhm.
They were getting really angry. And I understood then, and then I coined this expression that they were thinking about what they wanted, but they weren't feeling deserving or connected to it. And
Right.
that was my first step really in the book before I even realized I was going to write a book, that I had to find a way to convey to everyone that just because you think you want something, if it doesn't match what you feel internally or emotionally, you can't
Mhm.
manifest it, for lack of a better word, bringing it in, attracting it in. And so this was tricky because the laws of attraction were saying, see it, feel it, see it, feel it. And all
Right.
my people were confused, right? They were saying, well, I do feel it. And that's when I said, no, you're think feeling
You're
it.
thinking about it, you're not
You're
actually
think feeling it.
associating the feeling with it.
Exactly, but many people who are very cerebral get very caught up with think feeling. They actually
Mhm.
believe that when they're thinking something, that they're feeling it. And so there's a definite difference between feeling and think feeling, which is
Mhm.
conceptual. And so that brings me to another part that I developed in the book. I mean, people do this, but nobody thought that this is what I need to do in therapy. I need to learn how to feel that I'm deserving, feel that I'm enough, feel that these thoughts that I'm having can create. And that really is the biggest part of the process, helping people become suggestible so they can feel what they want and be suggestible to themselves to attract it in. And that's what hasn't been being addressed.
Yeah.
So, those were the beginnings of how I formulated my book: think, feeling, suggestibility, all that fun stuff.
Can you great. Can you articulate, like, the difference between thinking feeling and feeling in a way maybe you've got a story or an
Sure.
example?
Okay. This is an analogy that I use because this feeling is a slippery slope.
Yes.
It's very hard because it's process oriented. So I will liken it to anyone when you have a first sip of wine or a drink, or if you have a hit of pot, what happens to you, physiologically in any drug induced state? It starts to spread to every cell of your body, and
Yeah.
it's physiologically felt. It could be or oh, whatever the feeling is, you feel it physiologically. It doesn't reside mentally. I know I'm
Mhm.
feeling this. In fact, when you say I know, it's an intellectual concept. When one says, I feel this, I'm experiencing this sensation, that's how you define that it's in the feeling state. I hope that's not too confusing.
No, I don't think so.
I was actually gonna add something
Yeah.
that what deepened this process for me is that I went back to school for hypnotherapy for a year, and God, did I love it. First of
Yeah.
all, I was able to leave my then 13 and 14-year-olds, and I've never been able to do that because I'm a single mom. It was very exciting to go back to school. But what I learned really solidified what I had been putting together in my own practice. And then it elaborated on the suggestibility. And then I
Mhm.
was able to apply it in the therapeutic process. I was able to get people to be more suggestible to the positive things in their life. And so this really enhanced that next idea I had that I didn't know yet I was going to put into writing.
Yeah, I'm also a huge advocate of hypnotherapy. I really think that, as important and as helpful as like traditional talk therapy is, hypnotherapy gives you like that instant knowing
Well,
that
it
kind
gives
of, you know,
instant knowing in the feeling state.
right, right. And so I think it really helps kind of solidify and even advance whatever you're working on in traditional therapy a lot.
I agree.
Um,
I agree.
can you share like some profound experiences you've had, like either yourself with a client that kind of helped you see the shift starting to happen with people and you know inspired you to kind of put it in your book?
Hmm. I don't specifically talk about hypnotherapy. I do talk about suggestibility, so that is a
Yeah,
part of
yeah.
it. I would say what really fascinated me, especially the first day I went to the class, and let's say there was about 20 people sitting in chairs. The instructor was like, "Okay, you're all in a trance." And I watched 19 people, I was the only one, who literally went back in their chair like this. I was I was laughing my you know what off. I said, "This is ridiculous. What is happening here? And why is everyone in a trance in 4 seconds?" And so this became my mode of operation when I was in school for a year learning about it, because there are people like me, definitely not in that class that I was in, but a lot of people are suggestible and a lot of
Hmm.
people aren't quite as suggestible, and a lot of people are resistant because they reside in their head and they're analytic.
Right.
Hello.
Hello.
This was but this was such great news, because if I could learn how to deal very much in training, like with psychotherapy, if I could learn how to deal with the toughest customer, which was like
Mhm.
myself, then
Yep.
the suggestible people were going to be so easy. And they were.
Totally.
They would come in and I would say, one, two, three, whatever I did. And they were there. And then there were those like me, which really made me work hard, which gave me such a sense of satisfaction. Because here's the truth, everyone could be hypnotized if you look at hypnosis as a way to open yourself up to be suggestible to what you would like to feel.
Hmm.
All of us know what it's like to be in a suggestible state of what we don't want to feel, the
Right.
negative things, the fearful things. But you could turn that, you can flip that into, well, if I'm suggestible to the negative, I can be suggestible to the positive.
You
And
certainly can.
that's what I learned. I loved it.
Amazing. What would you like to tell people more about your book? The steps and how it works. Is it the kind of thing where you should kind of start at chapter one and work your way through, or is life not really that neat and organized, and sometimes certain things happen in certain places?
Both.
Yep.
I think it's good to start with, um, well, the first thing I do is outline, um, where do you feel like you're not enough? Which is really your stinking thinking, right? And everybody
Stinking
has
thinking.
it.
I like that.
Stinking thinking. We come into the world, and I believe we all come in because our souls want to be healed. So
Hmm.
then that would be indicative of feeling not enough or a sense of trauma or whatever that is that we need to work on. So everyone has something to work on. So that's the first thing I open with, because you cannot change what you don't know, right? You can read the book, and if you don't understand the negative thinking that's tripping you up, that's creating patterns, that's constantly replicating in your life, then what is change about? You need to know what it is you're wanting to change. So that's really the first initial step,
Hmm.
right? Then once you identify that, and I do this in my practice all the time. I learned through the hypnosis and the psychotherapy and all the years I was doing it that some people were getting better, which simply means they were overcoming their stinking thinking and learning to feel positively, and they were having positive outcomes, career,
Right.
relationship, money. And I was just like, wow, they're such a better, patient than I ever was. They're doing this so quickly. Why was
Yeah.
I so slow? Why is that person so slow? And so, what accumulated over time is that the people that were authentically suggestible in the room with me, that were really open
Hmm.
to receiving the information, feeling it, not feeling it, they were just speeding along. And the
Right.
people that us therapists like to call resistant, the people who were moving slowly, I mean, painfully slowly, were pushing out. And look, I was one of them. So they're my favorite people. It
Yeah.
challenges me, but I mean, I was slower than molasses. So that resistance to not being suggestible, that was being highlighted working with people. So I'm like, okay, I have to come up with a way to make those people that are more resistant suggestible. So, what I do in my office all the time is have people do that deep breathing with me, that special diaphragmatic breathing, which means you have got to exhale. And these people that were resistant were not exhaling. They were
Yep.
highly anxious and they were breathing shallowly,
Taking very shallow breaths
shallow
and
breath, and it's right here,
yep,
right?
yep.
It's right here.
None of it's down here. It's all up here. Yeah.
Exactly. And they didn't even know it. And so I would point out to them, I'd say, hey, see how you're breathing up here and your shoulders are
Yeah.
moving? And they'd be like, yeah,
Yeah.
I breathe like that all the time.
You're like, "Well, that's the problem, sweetheart."
Exactly. Exactly. But without saying that, I'd say, let's try something different. So we do it together and we breathe in through our nose and we exhale elaborately through our mouth. Very important to exhale through the mouth.
Mhm.
And it's been proven that when you exhale through your mouth, you tap into what's known as the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve scientifically works as a relaxant, it works like
Mhm.
an anti anxiety. So, here, with this scientific factual information, I would work with people in the room doing the breathing several times, if not for at least 3 minutes, get their breathing more corrective. And of course, they'd start yawning. And by the way,
Mhm.
when you start yawning, it's because you're um, recalibrating the oxygen in your brain. When you're highly anxious, you're not exhaling, and therefore your homeostasis stasis of breath is very shallow, right?
Mhm.
So I do this in the room first, and then with all the techniques from hypnotherapy, and I think you did a little of that, so you know.
Yep.
And you're looking for that, right? You're looking for that. Yep. There's there's certain things that I will wait for when I know I've got them. And what I mean by I've got them, I mean they're suggestible to themselves positively, and they're
Right.
going to take in what I'm going to say. Not perfectly, but better than the nope, I can't change my thinking. You don't understand. I can't. And I hear
Yeah.
that all the time. And I understand it. I felt like that too. So I completely get it. So that step in the book is critical. Knowing that negative voice, that stinking thinking that's controlling your life and replicating patterns versus that suggestible, open, physiologically relaxed state. That has to come first. So, yeah, that step of the breath, that really does have to come first. And then the other 6 steps, you could just mix it up in
Yeah.
order, if that makes sense, that the breathing is first.
100%. I think finally now, I mean, I think even in your field, people were so focused on talk therapy, they were less focused on the nervous system and the physical aspects of getting control over your mind, which, as I was taught pretty early on in therapy, getting control over your body is actually the fastest way to control your mind, controlling
Yes.
your nervous system and getting to that state that you're talking about, being open and suggestible to embrace whatever may come, whatever instruction may be next or whatever life event is happening next. It's not that your life magically becomes easier and you start making strides. The life events are becoming easier. You're just reacting to them differently now. And
That's key what you just said. You're
yeah.
reacting differently because you're not reacting like a deer caught in the headlights. You're not going, and the
The
minute
panic
negative
and the dread and
panic, negative state trance, then all those negative thoughts come. That's what we feel. That's the feeling, the negativity. And then that energy goes out there and then we bring it in and it loops in like that.
yeah.
So got to break that. So yeah, Ashley, about 10, 15 years ago, I started to do the breathing. People would be like, people would leave and say, God, you're so woo woo. And I'm thinking, actually, it's so scientific.
It's very scientific, but
I
I
know,
feel
but I
like
didn't know how to address it back then. I didn't even know about the vagus nerve. I just knew that the people who are more suggestible were doing and responding differently physiologically and emotionally than the people who were anxious and breathing shallowly. That's all I
Yeah.
knew 15 years ago. So you could see it took a while and I had to expand my knowledge. So the book addresses that right at the gate. I mean, you have to physiologically change your state if you want to change your thinking. Body
Mhm.
first, then mind. And
Yeah.
yes, the body mind connection is intrinsically, in tune with one another.
Right.
However, when you observe people trying to change what they think by shoving in something else when they're anxious, it that makes people more resistant and more upset
Yeah.
because you can't change your thinking that way, you know? It's like a negative.
No, because whatever is coming up for a reason, so if you just try to shove other thoughts on top of it, you're it's not gonna work that way.
But it's more than that. This is key. It's actually more than that. What happens when you're in that negative state with your internalized negative dialogue and you're trying to shove something good in and you really think you think you're doing it, you have a more negative response. Well, see how awful I am? I can't do it. This doesn't work. This is BS. You because you're in that negative state trance, if you try
Right.
to enforce the good, you get more negative. So I kept observing this going, huh, okay. So that's why the prerequisite to changing your thought is changing your physiology. You could still push it out, but it's
Yeah.
going to be more contemplative. You're going to say, I don't know, as opposed to, nope, not working.
Yeah.
Right.
You'll be, perceiving more than judging, I guess.
Yes, that's such a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yes, you'll be able to perceive and feel more than think you're feeling what you want and then frustrated that you're not manifesting it or attracting it, right?
Right. Right.
So I'm going to say that this is probably, if not the most important thing about my book. And really to help people who come to me and say, my therapist, 20 years, and I didn't learn anything, and I didn't really change or grow, and therapy is worthless. This is the key to change. You must physiologically be open and suggestible before we can start changing your internalized dialogue.
Yeah.
Period, bar none, full stop. Right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Can you think of oh, sorry, were you gonna say something?
No, no, go ahead.
Can you think of a key moment where somebody had a breakthrough in this process and you were like, like, "That's it."
So many. I mean, so many, but you have to understand, Ashley, it's visually palpable.
Yeah.
It's talking to someone once they're more suggestible and you physiologically can see, and I could do that on telehealth too. You see the aha, you see
Yep.
the eyes, because when we feel things, observe things, our eyes look in different directions, and the whole expression and the physiology of the person changes. And I'll
Just
say,
lightens. I know what
yeah,
you mean.
it expands, it lightens, and I'll say, you got that,
Yeah.
right? And they're like, "Yeah." And that happens all the time. So I c it wouldn't even really matter what I would say with someone that they're working on. It happens with everyone according to whatever they're working on,
Yeah.
right?
Totally. I love when you get someone that has like that aha moment, but then and you can see their wheels turning. You're almost like, oh, they figured out that not only does this aha moment apply to this one thing we were talking about, it applies to all these other patterns of thought or behavior that been engaged in.
Exactly. It has the domino effect.
Yeah.
And this is actually that step where that expression, "You're standing in your own way,"
Hmm.
that's the biggest aha moment. You're like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god.
Once you
I
can take a step back and get out of your own way and observe it, more neutrally and kind of observe everything else that's going on in your life. Yeah, that's where it's like the one major breakthrough, like you said, a domino effect just pushes on through to the others, which is profound, I'm sure, for you, and definitely for me in what I do too. So,
And you said something else that's really important. I mean, so important. You said when you observe that part of yourself, here's that piece that's intrinsic with being suggestible and feeling it and me being able to observe that.
mhm,
Something happens because you're not at one with your negative voice. You've released it because you are observing. You're not,
right,
"Oh my god, and I feel it, and it's terrible, and I
yeah,
can't." You're observing it, you're not one with it. You've taken a step back, and therefore you can say, "Oh, I see what I have been doing, and now I'm aware of the other opportunities I can be, I can
right,
experience." So that's really key that you said that. It's not being present with the but
right,
observing it from a more relaxed, calm, suggestible state.
yeah,
Key. Key
yeah,
before the change.
helping people understand that you know their thoughts about themselves are that's the thing that's holding you up the whole time. It's usually not what other people are doing, it's how you're perceiving it. And when you're in it, you feel like everything's happening to you. But when people step back and they're able to do that, when they're able to look at things, they're not in it so much, and they don't feel like everything is happening to them. They're just observing it more neutrally, like we talked about.
So you just said, thank you.
Yeah.
It's not happening to them. So I believe that we're placed here for higher learning, and these things that happen to us are happening for us.
Right.
It's a gift as an opportunity
I
to
was just
grow.
gonna say, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity, and even when things feel bad, they feel like a negative thing happening, it is an opportunity for change, for growth, for an experience that you were supposed to have here on planet Earth. It's any number of those things.
Exactly. Now, that's a tricky thing that I have to deal with people when there's such an extreme trauma, or not even extreme trauma and abuse. Trying to, then I get to use all my psychological, all the theorists and the
Yeah,
theories that I love that are so juicy. Once I get a person suggestible, I can explain the theory as to why they feel like that and how, and educate them, which is really important. People really, really, really need that. I know that's what I wanted. It's like a yummy, and you see people that like, oh, that makes so much sense. And
mhm,
people like things to make sense. So if you want somebody to feel completely differently than their negative self talk that they learned in their childhood throughout their life, you have to be empathic with them as to why they learned that. And that's a genuine feeling and genuine internalized voices that they feel, but also it's their gift that they can change if they want to.
yeah.
It's a dance, it's delicate.
It's there for all of us, it's a choice, and,
Yes.
I think
Yes.
the
And
hardest thing about what I do and what you do to some degree is helping people understand that some of the positions you're in were absolutely a choice.
no, and I use that word after someone's been with me for a while, because when
Yeah,
you have trauma, everyone has had some kind of trauma, and negative voices in your head, it doesn't feel like a choice.
yeah,
And
I
that's
know.
what I've heard for almost 30 years. You don't understand.
Yeah,
I don't want to think like this. I don't want to feel like this. And so we have to be really careful. Um, we have to educate them and explain to them the specific things that happen psychologically, and
yeah,
then say, you didn't have a choice then. You couldn't have had a choice then. You're
right.
just doing what you know.
You were
And
doing
if I
what you know, there was things
this
you
is
didn't know.
you're right. So I do this with my people all the time. So if anybody was watching it that knows me, I will say to them explicitly, so you were trained really well and you're like a baby seal. Meaning you're doing exactly what you learned. So
Right,
you didn't have a choice.
yeah,
But then when you uncover all this, You do have a choice, and that's why you can change your life.
Totally.
And I get
Mm.
excited about that.
Um, do you feel like there is I've spoken with somebody about this, now I can't remember who. Do you feel like there is a difference in the generations as far as people being more suggestible? Like let's say like boomers and up are a lot less suggestible and millennials on or Gen Xers and on down are a little more suggestible, or do you think there's like a pattern there for you in your practice or
I definitely have that with cultural thinking and societal thinking, but not when it comes to suggestibility. It's almost like your own wiring.
yep.
Either you're very resistant or you're very like suggestible. Has to do with your own experiences.
Mhm. Um, what else you wanna tell us about your book?
My fabulous book here, very small, very easy to read. I wanted
Very
to
digestible.
very I yes, I wanted to make it so simple for the lay person to be able to do it. I think I did that. It's short, it's sweet, it's to the point. I don't want to give away all the different chapters that
Yeah.
really show you how to everything is really about do this to be suggestible, take this action to be that really heightens all your suggestibility. And with work at the end of the week or the end of the day or for the rest of your life, taking notes on what worked for you, what didn't work for you. So I give a little tricks of the trade. I think there's about, oh god, I'm going to say there's like a half dozen that
Yeah.
really work. And then finally, the ultimate step, which is 6 before 7, is behavioral change.
Mhm.
Because again, psychotherapists, somebody even asked me the other day, "Do you do CBT?" And when I was training and when all my colleagues were training, we were like, "CBT, that's for non-therapist therapists. We're Freudian and Jungian and, we do the deep work."
Yeah.
Well, such bullshit because you have to change your behavior if you wanna change.
Well,
You
it's like everybody watched the movie The Secret, and they thought that the key to unlocking all of the riches and all of their dreams in the world was just to think about it and never actually do anything about it, you know?
That's when I said when the laws of attraction, and I should have said The Secret when it came to my office about 15 years ago and people were frustrated, it was just about, "I want it, therefore I have it."
Yep.
A, you don't know if you're really wanting it because you're think feeling it, and B, you're not changing any of your behaviors to
Right.
bring it in. So, this is exactly my book
You're not
is
exactly,
my
letting
book
the
is about
universe.
the secret, but the secret to have the secret become yours. How's that?
That's good, yeah.
The secret to
Yeah,
become
it's important to, uh, you know, let the universe actually know that you want the change that you're seeking by taking
exactly.
action, by changing your behavior, by all of those things.
Exactly. And when you change your behavior, you're enforcing your own suggestibility that you believe you deserve it or can have it.
Mhm.
So that's a big part of the component too. We need to be aligned, body, mind, and spirit, with what we deserve and what we want. And so that's why I broke it down into steps. Um, and that brings me to another thing therapists will leave out of therapy besides the behavior. Um, they'll leave out always, mm, you can call it spiritual.
Yeah,
I try to entertain it with people in a way that using the word philosophical because it's less woo woo than spiritual.
totally.
It's really the same thing.
Yeah.
What is your belief system about change? What is your belief system about, and I say in my book, the universe having your back? Because when people truly feel shame and they don't feel worthy, they don't believe that my mother, my father, go down the list. Nobody had my back.
Yeah.
And when you believe that, no matter how hard you try to change your feelings, your behavior, if that's consistently the story that's running the show, I don't deserve it. No one has my back. I'm going to fall flat on my face. Then you're going to keep
You're gonna
replicating
keep
your patterns.
getting that.
You're just gonna keep getting it, and it's my job to see when someone's doing that. So it's the physiological, it's the philosophical, it's the emotional suggestibility, and it's the behavior.
Y Totally with you.
Of
Do
course you
you
are.
have Of course you are. We've talked about all this before, but, h what could you tell people who are, they're doing it, like, they're taking the actions, they are doing the work, but
Mhm.
they may not be 100% there, but they're really working hard at it. But as you know, sometimes Rome isn't built overnight, the magical change doesn't happen overnight. What is something that you would say to somebody who is taking the steps, but isn't quite 100% there yet and just is struggling with I guess
The difference.
feeling the difference, feeling encouraged to keep going because it's a struggle still.
I get
I think
that.
that's the phase of change where you're working, 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 and results don't always happen overnight, of course. But
They sure
um,
don't.
yeah. They certainly don't. Sometimes they take years. And, I always tell people that,
True.
like, sometimes just because this is your plan, it doesn't mean that the universe doesn't have an even better plan for you that you don't even know about. No, so I tell people to uh, not assume that you're always right about what's best for you. But I don't know what you can offer or say, or what you would say to someone in that situation.
Well, this is something I say to everyone when that comes up. Do you brush your teeth once and never do it again?
That's a good one.
If you work out or go to the gym or take a class or run or lift weights, do you do it once and think,
The once workout isn't gonna do much for you.
Well, exactly. And then I say, life is managed care. Think of all the things that you do. You get up in the morning, you do brush your teeth, you make your bed. We have rituals, and it's management. It's something we don't just do once, we do it all the time. We don't even think about it. We habituate to it. So too is this process. You have to be under managed care, like with like good vitamins, healthy eating. You won't do it perfectly all the time. You may not feel amazing all the time, but you need consistent managed care if you want to feel good, think good, and bring in the good.
Yeah. Totally. And like you just touched upon it, that not every day is going to be perfect. You're going to have some days that are better than others. It's about showing up and still sticking with your plan of doing the work on yourself instead, and we touched upon this a little bit earlier, but it's not so much that life magically gets easier when you start doing work on yourself. Like all the same stuff that's happening to somebody who's in a bad place and somebody who's happening in a good place are probably not that much different, but the person who's in a better place is the one who reacts to it differently. So, instead of
Yes.
curling up in a ball and turning off your phone or freaking out or whatever is going on, you
Yes.
take 5, take a deep breather, as we've also discussed, and, calm yourself down and not be so reactive or whatever's going on, you just react differently to it.
Absolutely. And to that point, when I get this all the time. Oh my God, I've totally regressed. I'm back to square one. It's my job, if it's true, and it generally is, to point out you're not back at square one.
Yeah.
Sometimes things happen in life, all the ingredients hit at once, the band-aid is ripped off, and you feel your wound, and you
Mhm.
start, listening to the negative voices. However, that's microregression. That happens to all of us with those right ingredients at the right time. It
Everyone.
happens to everyone. But my job is to say, let me show you, and I will bring up things that they said and shared, show you how differently you think now and how
Mhm.
differently you're responding now. Even though it feels the same, you're actually responding to it a little differently. It just takes time to feel that full body change. And you know what? We'll all go back there. People think, you're one and done. You have learned to have this corrective thinking, and then life is magical, and you'll never feel it again. You'll never
Yeah.
have that same issue or internalized struggle. And
Yeah.
I say to anyone who ever comes in and says that, people are lying to you. You're
Yeah.
always going to be able to connect to that trauma, that upset. And you want to, because then it shows you how far you've come. If you annihilated that trauma and that thinking, then you wouldn't feel so good.
Right.
You'd have nothing to measure it against because everything is dualistic in our world.
Yeah, I mean,
So
if we lived in a world where nothing bad ever happened or we never experienced stress or, any of that, or we didn't have to work to support ourselves to live in a house and do all the things on this planet, we wouldn't know what a bad day feels like versus a good day. We would just be.
exactly. And being able to show the contrast really helps people realize, oh, I have changed. I'm feeling terrible right now, but I could see that it actually was different than the
Right.
first 1,000 times I felt terrible, or 10,000 million times that they felt terrible, to be more precise.
And it's one of those things where I tell myself even, um, just you have a bad day, you don't react the way you probably should have. Forgive yourself. Don't forgive yourself and keep doing the same thing over and over again, but forgive
Right.
yourself enough to give you the space to improve and reflect and all of those things.
Yes, and sometimes, you know, when you're accustomed to having negativity be your best friend, as crazy as that sounds, you would be surprised how large percentage of the population thinks negativity and depressing thoughts are their best friends. But
Yeah.
sometimes we will go there. And you know what? I know when I catch myself, I'm like, I just want to feel it. I'm going to give myself 8 hours and then I'll use all my tools. And of course, the minute you say that, you know, 5 minutes later, it's like, okay,
All right,
just,
I'm over it.
yeah, right. You
Yeah.
just give yourself permission because
Yeah.
that's important too. It's not about la, la, la. I always feel good and happy.
You
Happiness,
can't tune out your feelings. I mean,
you can't tune out your feelings. And happiness isn't a constant. I'm always doing this myself because I walk the walk as I assist people. It's important to understand that happiness is something you glimpse.
Mhm.
It's a fleeting experience. What we do is strive through process to get there all the time,
Right.
through the good breathing,
Yeah.
through the positive suggestibility. We're doing that to feel happy.
Right.
So happiness is process oriented.
Life is a process of experiencing love and giving love, and you're stringing together the good and all of those experience because it's inevitably going to be a roller coaster ride.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. um Life is fun, life is wild, but
Life is hard.
it's hard, it's really hard, especially on earth.
It's hard coming to earth, it really is.
Yeah.
And then if you ask people when you try to get them to be more philosophical or spiritual, "Why do you think you're here?" That's always the best question. And I
Mhm.
always say, "I don't mean here in therapy with me." And,
Mhm.
"Why do you think you're here? What are you
Yeah.
here to learn?" It's always provocative, and it's a good opener for leading someone down that road of the bigger things.
Yeah. And I think that some people get caught up in, well, if I'm not here for some giant venture, like if I'm not going to cure cancer or if I'm not going to make some massive contribution to the world or be a famous athlete or a rock star or whatever, then what am I doing here? I think actually some of people's most important life missions I get overlooked is like being a nurturer, being a loving parent and a matriarch or whoever the person is. I think that some of the less intense life missions, if you will, are the most important ones because if it weren't for the nurturers in the world and people who are just here to experience and give back in smaller but actually very large ripple effect ways, you know that it's all an important life purpose of being here. So I think that, I don't know, I've had clients before that are like, well, I've been a mom. I'm like, That's an important job. You
Yeah, but I
know?
would say if my little one wants to say hi. Oh, she ran away.
Oh,
Um,
child.
and again, that is incredibly true. However, I would add that the most important thing isn't the grand scheme of things like curing cancer, which would be phenomenal,
Yeah.
more grand than being a nurturer, because a lot of people who have trauma can nurture others. It's
Yes.
about why are you here? Maybe it's to forgive yourself. Maybe it's to forgive your parents. Maybe it's to nurture your own self, which is generally the case. That's
Mhm.
the biggest reason why you're here, to heal your soul from the injuries, the injustices, the painful experiences, and to love yourself.
Mhm.
It
Yep.
seems so simple, but it's huge.
It's easier said than done, I think, for most of us, and, there's so
Yeah.
much negativity out there that I feel like negativity, anger are easy choices because it's readily available to you as soon as you walk outside the door, it's what you
Wait,
choose to do.
actually, when you walk inside the door, that's what I'm trying to
True,
say.
true.
We're attracted to it out there if it magnetizes to what we feel in here. That's when you
Yeah,
get the big,
yeah,
so I think that that question of why do you think you're here, when you break it down and you keep getting this very neurolinguistics, you keep breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking down. It's because your soul wants to feel what you didn't get in your childhood:
yeah,
lovable, enough, smart enough, pretty enough, all the things. And that has to be enough. And then the other things are icing on the cake. Yes, and now I'm a great mom and a great, but it has to come from the self.
yeah.
That's the purpose.
Building upon those experiences and transforming them, transmuting them
Yep.
is so rewarding, and, it's I don't know how to say this. It's actually almost kind of fun recreating experiences as an adult that maybe you didn't have as a
So
kid
fun.
because
I call
you're
it the second childhood you
the
always
second
want.
childhood is great.
It's more fun because you bring your grown-up mind and then you get to be playful and let go of things
Yeah,
and speak so kindly to yourself. It's just I think it's, in my mind, that's the best thing that one could have and
totally.
experience in their life.
And recreating them in an adult's way, and it's fun when you're an adult because nobody can tell you, "No, you can't have ice cream at, like, 10 AM," or whatever you're trying to do.
That's
Um,
right. That's
yeah,
right.
healing the child as an adult can be
Mm,
really fun.
mhm.
I, uh I have one more question for you.
Okay, it sounds like it's gonna be a big one. Go for it.
Well, it is and it isn't. It's relevant. Um, for everybody out there listening, what do you think is current that people really need to hear right now?
Change is possible. Change
I
is
like that.
possible. If you think you can't, you actually can.
Yeah. And I'd add, not just on an individual level, but on a collective level, change is possible for all of us.
Absolutely. And by the way, with the political climate and everything, people come in and they feel so helpless.
Yeah.
So I will say to that, the only thing we could do, which is the biggest thing, is heal on an individual level, love on the individual level, because love is healing. And when you love yourself, it cycles out, it cycles in. And if everyone was to love themselves, we would then collectively feel love. And that does change our outer world or climate. So it starts with one person, it starts with yourself. So you can do something. Change is possible.
Yeah. I love it. Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your book and sharing your practice and what you do every day. And this has been a great conversation that I think people need to hear. Things are a bit wild and there's a lot going on. Go inward, take those deep breaths, get Jessica's book so you can figure the rest of it out and keep improving and be patient and kind with yourself as well.
Oh, Ashley, I want to thank you because on a Sunday morning, I Don't even know how all this came out, but it's because of you and the many conversations we've had, because you're open, you're psychological, you're spiritual. So thank you for engaging in this because it means so much to me and I know it means so much to you. So maybe we could help some people.
It's what I'm here for out there in the world. This is my purpose. So I'm just here to spread the message far and wide as much as I can.
Ditto. Thank you, Ashley.